Well, hello and welcome to another Sean's Bourbon Review. It's been quite a long time since I've done a bourbon review. And quite honestly, last weekend was my 30th birthday. I was in Kentucky for the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. I did a bourbon review while I was there. I watched it back. I was quite drunk. Probably not going to put that bourbon review up. But this bourbon that I'm bringing to you guys today is from that trip. We had a great time going to some different distilleries. We went to some of the bigger ones on Friday, and then Saturday I decided to hop around to some of the smaller distilleries, and we stumbled upon a distillery called Preservation. So, little education on this bourbon and Preservation. Knew nothing about Preservation as a distillery, knew nothing of this bourbon, which is called Rare Perfection. So I've done some research on this. There's a backstory to this. Preservation as a distillery essentially was a distillery opened up by a rep who used to work for the Van Winkle kind of company. So Pappy Van Winkle, all that kind of stuff. They broke apart. Van Winkle kind of went off with Buffalo Trace. And this rep kind of wanted to do his own thing. And he wanted to work with like rare whiskeys and getting these rare casks and facilitating this. So he decided to open up Preservation. And Preservation is a distillery. It's on a like tobacco farm in Bardstown, which is where we were. Awesome place. Beautiful, cool, small, intimate distillery. So this guy's idea was they opened in like 2015, something like that. And they're making their own bourbons there. But whilst they're making their own bourbon, wanted to be able to have some offerings for people. And so what he did was procured really rare barrels from different distilleries, whether that's Willet, other places, and kind of brought out this like Rare Perfection line. And so this Rare Perfection line, and Odin's going to want to get in here because he has so much energy today. This Rare Perfection line is his finding. So there were some people who found these casks, these barrels in Canada. And they tasted it and were like, hey, you need to get your hands on these barrels. And so they tasted it at Preservation and essentially were like buying the whole lot. We want all the barrels. Now, the interesting thing about this is anybody who knows anything about bourbon, anything about whiskey, for a bourbon to be called a bourbon, it has to be made in America. So technically, this is not a bourbon. Technically, it's a Canadian whiskey. With that being said, it is made with a 4-grain mash bill, the same four-grain mash bill that all kind of American bourbons are made with: corn, rye, wheat, and geez Louise, corn, rye, wheat, and I'm forgetting the fourth one. Anyways, with that being said, it is a bourbon. It's made from a mash bill for bourbon with at least 51% corn. It just happens to be aged in Canada, which is unique because one of the things that happens with aging whiskey and aging bourbon is that when it's in a climate where there's hot and cold swings, like Kentucky, that bourbon seeps into the oak in the hot parts of the year, evaporates, gets soaked into the oak, but then in the cold parts of the year, it gets pulled back out. And this in and out with the charring of the barrel is what gives these bourbons this dark hue. It's what gives it that really oaky, vanilla-y, chocolatey kind of taste. Well, these were aged in Canada for 14 years, meaning you can kind of tell it is dark, right? It's a bourbon color, but not as dark as maybe, like I can get another one of my bourbons here. I don't know. We can go with Basil Hayden, right? You can kind of tell it's similar, definitely similar, but not exactly the same. So is this a bourbon? Yeah, technically no, it's a Canadian whiskey, but it is. For all intents and purposes, this is a bourbon. Aged 14 years, that's another thing. Bourbons average like 6 to 8 years of aging. You might get some like 10 years, like with Russell's Reserve. You start getting up into the 14 and like that's starting to get a little heavy for aging. And what can happen in a normal aging process, that many years of that bourbon going in and out of barrels and get very tar-like, because again, that alcohol is going into the barrel and it's pulling out a lot of that charring. And at that point, what a lot of normal aged bourbons can get very, very tar, very syrupy like, and then very high alcohol proof. But because this was aged in Canada, 14 years, this might have a taste of something that is a lot newer of a bourbon, right? Something that's almost maybe 6 years. So anyways, we went to preservation as my friends and I, not knowing what to expect. We actually got recommended this by some of the distillers and bartenders at Heaven Hill and Willett. This place was their favorite. So I think that goes to tell you something. I've watched some other reviews online. People either love this bourbon or absolutely hate it, which I think is really interesting. I tasted this. I was drunk, but it was one of the most unique tasting bourbons I've ever had in my life. It tasted different than every other bourbon I've tried so far in the past like 5 or 6 years of messing around with bourbons. So this isn't like a first time sober tasting. So I'm gonna give it a go here. So 14 year, I hope you stuck with me through all that information there. Odin's looking at me like, come on, bro. Okay, here we go. It's like wine, dude. My favorite part, the uncorking process. Guys, $180. I never would spend that much money on a bottle like this, but I got it in Kentucky. I was a little drunk. It was my birthday. You actually can find this in wherever you're at in stores for cheaper, but that's because this is like a little bit of a different version because it was at their distillery, so it's a little bit higher priced. So it's a little bit of a different version than you will find in stores. So there is that. So here we go, uncorking. Ooh, that's nice. That reminded me of a pirate ship. Captain Jack Sparrow. All right. 14-year rare perfection. Let me read you the back here. A true connoisseur finds those elusive moments of rare perfection. For his passions of choice, hers. Jeez, guys. For his or hers passion of choice, perhaps a handful of times in life. Before bottling one of our unique treasures, pirate. We make sure all of the elements marry flawlessly, and the product inside stands up to our name. For those who truly appreciate the finest of spirits, we dedicate this ember of brilliance to life's moments of rare perfection. So they're definitely setting you up there for like, oh, this is only for the most refined palates. Me, duh. Okay, here we go. A little glug, glug, glug. I'm not gonna pour a lot because this is a very expensive bottle. And just listen, I'm being completely honest with you guys. More overproof, it's 100 proof. Percent alcohol with that would be about 50%, roughly 50%. Okay, now let's see if I remember this correctly. When I smelt it at the distillery, heavy like honey pecan butterscotch, heavy on that. So let's let it marinate, baby. Yep. And so here's the thing. This smell, I think there's something genetically that goes on for some people. I watched some reviews online and people are like, oh, this smells like rubbing alcohol or like rubbery or almost like a cleaning material. I think this might be something like those people who, unfortunately, when you taste cilantro, you taste soap. I think there might be something going on in the mash bill here with this, where some people are picking that up, and genetically, the way their taste buds work or their senses work, they're picking that up. Because I'm not picking that up. I am picking up honey. I'm picking up toffee, butterscotch, and I could see possibly that butterscotch going almost too far. Like if you really pick up that note and then it turning into like that off note. But I don't get the off note with that. But I think that's where that note's coming from. It's like the honey butterscotch note, but if you take it too far, all of a sudden, I guess rubbery. All right, here we go. Oh, 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 guys, I get it. There are people who have tasted this who will be like, not worth it. And in some ways I can agree. Like, it's good and it is very unique in its flavor to me. It's very different than any other bourbons I've tasted. Now, I haven't tasted a lot of bourbons. I've been more along the lines of normal bourbons. But this one tastes really unique to me. For it being 100 proof too, super smooth. And it just, that butterscotch, just like butter pecan, bourbon pecan taste is just so forward with this. Burnt marshmallow to me. It is so good. Again, I understand where some people are coming from, where they might pick up the rubbery, the tar. I think it's that note gone too far, gone to the extreme for some people. And maybe I don't have a refined enough palate. That totally could be. So I'm not going to be a snob about this. And maybe some of you out there are who don't like this. I don't know. Other people are like, oh, you're just saying you like it because you spent $180 on it. You have to like it. I would be straight up with you guys. I mean, I wouldn't have bought it if I didn't like it, obviously. But I mean, I wouldn't have bought, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have bought it. I also didn't know the price of this when I tasted it at the distillery. They didn't tell me how expensive it was. I tasted it first and then went and found the bottle and was like, whoa, holy crap, right? So, so good. Again, if you are somebody that like has never spent over $100 on a bottle of bourbon, and maybe that's like you're delving into that, you're like, hey man, you know what? I want to splurge. Personally, from my palate, and so if your palate is you like lower rye, you like more wheat, you like more of the oak, you like more of the classic Werther's Original vanilla, those notes, this bourbon's for you. If you like more rye, more spice, more peppery, more flowery, maybe not yours, right? Maybe not for your palate. And so again, I'm talking to people who love bourbon at this point. This is not an introductory bourbon, obviously. $180, $100 and maybe $40 if you're finding it at your local store. I normally would put this on ice. I guess I will, just because that's what I'm supposed to do, because that's what I do. I'm going to put it on ice, even though I feel sacrilegious doing this. I feel like I don't need to put this on ice, but I will. On ice. I know this is like more of a serious bourbon review, but when I spend $180 on something, you know, listen, that's how much a premium OnlyFans account for some of you out there is. That's premium content. You getting this for free, honey. For free. Because it's so tame, honestly, I'm not picking up any smelling notes now. That's not great. Ooh. Okay. A lot more butterscotch. Burnt butterscotch. When I put ice in it, I can see the rubbery thing. It could taste like when you ever have the ball of rubber bands. This is what somebody else on a review I saw explained it, and I get what they're saying now that I'm tasting this with ice. You know how just like a bunch of rubber bands smell? That's kind of, if you really think about it a lot, if you're really, really like trying to pick out unique notes, you could say that. I think if you don't think about it too much and you just like the beginning stages of that flavor is just butterscotch. Weird, I know, way to explain this, but it's like butterscotch front end. If you really want to think about that taste in depth, you could get to the point where you're perceiving that taste as like a bunch of rubber bands. I don't get that. I like it, man. I like it because it's unique. To me, I have never personally tasted another bourbon like this. I don't know how to like other bourbons. You kind of get punched in the face a little bit with the alcohol first, and you have to sift through the alcohol, and then a lot of times the heavy oak to get some of the more floral or sweet notes, which are totally there, but it takes a while of enjoying bourbon to get to those. The first thing you get, like the very first forward thing, is high amounts of like butterscotch pecan toffee. And so for some people, they're going to like that. For other people, they might not like this because it's not like a classical bourbon in that sense, but I think it's unique. And I mean, to be fair, it's a Canadian whiskey, I guess. It is a bourbon. Like, it is a 4-grain mash bill bourbon, just not aged in the United States, so we can't call it a bourbon. But listen, I think it is, if you have the money to splurge and like you're somebody that like every once in a while buys a more expensive bottle of bourbon, if you haven't tried it, it's at least worth the try. Again, I've seen a lot of people online there's no really in between with this bourbon. And maybe that's because it's so expensive. You're either going to love it or you're either going to hate it. I personally love it. I love it because it's uniqueness. Do I have bourbons that I like more because they're classical bourbon? Yes. This is not my most favorite bourbon of all time. It's not. But it's in its own class for me because of how unique it is. It stands alone in the uniqueness factor. Is it my most favorite overall ever? No, that still goes to Old Forester 1920 Prohibition. Nothing has ever beat that quite yet. Four Roses Small Batch Select and Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. I need to get Double Oak's going to be really expensive. But I tried that. That was really great. Four Roses Small Batch Select won't be that too bad. Tried that out there. Those were like, ooh, I think these are maybe what I'd like to do as a video is get another bottle of Old Forester 1920 and get a bottle of Four Roses Small Batch Select and do a tasting between those two and see who wins. And if I could ever get my hands on a double oak, but that was a $66 2-ounce pour at the distillery. Like, it's probably like a $500 bottle of bourbon. I don't know how expensive it is. But anyways, thank you for coming to my TED Talk about Rare Perfection 14-year. Now, my best friend Jake has the same thing as a 15-year. The difference, 1 year of aging. I would say that the notes that I'm picking up, which again are very honey butterscotch pecan, it's just a little bit more of that. I would say probably with that one, you do maybe get a little bit less of these potential rubbery taste that maybe some people get. Again, I don't get that. I especially don't get that when it's neat. I don't get that at all when it's neat. When it's on ice, a little bit. But this bourbon I would never drink this on ice, this bourbon. It's too expensive. It's a sipper. It's so calm with the alcohol that you don't need water or ice with it at all. You don't need it, right? So this is probably going to last me a while. I don't plan on just downing something like this. I'm going to have another drink after I turn this off. But hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're looking for a more expensive bottle, I would throw this one in the docket of something to try because of the uniqueness, not necessarily because it's the best bourbon of all time. Love you guys. Bye now.